Have you ever heard of a bride whose husbands never live to see their wedding night? Well, let me tell you a story that will make you sit up and listen. A long time ago, in a small village by the great river, there lived a beautiful young woman named Efua. Her beauty was like no other. Her skin glowed like the morning sun, and her eyes sparkled like the stars in the night sky. When she walked through the village, men stopped to watch her, and women whispered about how lucky the man who married her would be. But there was a problem. Every man who asked for Efua's hand in marriage and stood before her on their wedding day never lived to see the next morning. The first to die was Kojo, the fisherman's son. He was a strong young man, full of life, with a heart big enough to love Efua forever. He had worked hard, built a fine canoe, and caught the biggest fish to present to Efua's father, a danko, as a bride price. The old man was pleased and agreed to the marriage. The whole village gathered for the wedding, singing and clapping as the drummers played their best beats. When it was time for Kojo to lift Efua's veil, something strange happened. A loud thunderclap shook the sky, even though there were no clouds. The birds in the trees flew away in fear, and the wind whispered through the leaves. Kojo's smile faded. He placed his hand on his chest, gasped for breath, and before anyone could understand what was happening, he fell to the ground dead. The women screamed, and the men rushed forward. But it was too late. The village elder checked him and shook his head. Kojo was gone. Some said it was the gods who were angry. Others said it was bad luck, but life moved on. And soon, another suitor came. Ya the hunter was next. He was a fearless man, known for chasing lions deep into the forest. He was not afraid of anything. And when he saw Efua, he said, "Even if death itself waits for me, I will marry this woman." The elders warned him. Kojo died on his wedding day. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Ya only laughed. "I am stronger than any curse." So the marriage was arranged. Once again, the village gathered. The drummers beat their drums, and the women danced. Efua looked beautiful, but she did not smile. Deep inside, she was afraid. When Ya took her hand and spoke his vows, a sudden wind blew through the village. The trees swayed, and the air turned cold. Ya shivered and wiped his face. But then his legs grew weak. He fell to his knees, clutched his throat and collapsed, just like Kojo. The people gasped in horror. 2 men, 2 weddings, and 2 deaths. "This is not normal," the chief said. "This is a curse." From that day, no man dared to ask for Efua's hand. The whispers began. "She is cursed." Some said, "She is a witch," others murmured. Efua locked herself inside her father's hut, crying every night, wondering why this was happening to her. The village of Ensumuru was no longer the same. Fear hung over the people like a dark cloud. Nobody spoke of weddings, and no man dared to look in Efua's direction. Mothers warned their sons, fathers whispered in secret, and even the village elders, who had once blessed her marriages, now avoided her father's compound. Inside their small hut, Efua sat on a mat, her knees pulled to her chest. Her once bright eyes were now full of sadness. She could not understand why this was happening to her. She was just a woman who wanted love like every other woman. Her father, Adanko, watched her with worried eyes. He was a proud man, respected by all. But now, his heart was heavy with shame. He could no longer walk through the village without feeling the stares of the people. They whispered behind his back, "That is Adanko, the father of the cursed girl. He must know the secret behind her misfortune." One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, a knock came at their door. When Adanko opened it, he found an old woman standing outside. She was bent with age, her hair gray like the ashes of a dying fire. But her eyes were sharp, filled with the wisdom of many years. "Let me speak to the girl," she said. Adanko hesitated, but he let the woman inside. Efua looked up, surprised to see a stranger in her home. The old woman sat beside her and took her hands. "My child," she said in a voice soft as the evening breeze, "do you know why your suitors die?" Tears welled in Efua's eyes. "I don't know." "Mama," she whispered, "I don't know why this is happening. I have never harmed anyone. I only wanted to love and be loved." The old woman nodded. "Tell me, my child, do you ever feel a presence around you? Something unseen, something that watches from the shadows." Efua frowned. I don't know, sometimes. At night, I feel cold even when the air is warm. Sometimes I hear whispers, but when I turn, no one is there. The old woman sighed. Then it is as I feared. This is not a curse placed upon you. It is a spirit, a jealous spirit that follows you. One that does not want you to belong to any man. Efua's breath caught in her throat. A spirit, how could this be? Adenko's face darkened. What kind of spirit would do this? He asked. The old woman turned to him. Tell me. Adenko, did anything unusual happen on the day this child was born? Adenko's hands trembled. His eyes darted around the room as if he were searching for an escape. Adenko, the old woman pressed. Speak now, for the truth must be known. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. There was something, he admitted. The night Efua was born, the village was covered in a strange mist. It was so thick that no one could see beyond their doorstep. The midwife who delivered her was afraid. She said the child had come with a shadow, a presence she could not explain. But I was a young man then. I thought it was just old woman talk. The old woman's face grew grim. That was no ordinary mist, Adenko. That was the mark of a spirit that claimed her as its own from birth. It has followed her all these years, growing jealous each time she gives her heart to another. That is why every man who tries to take her, as his wife, meets his death. Efua's hands flew to her mouth. Her body trembled with fear. But why me? She cried. Why was I chosen? The old woman shook her head. Spirits do not choose without reason. There is something more to this. Something buried in the past. If you wish to free yourself, you must uncover the truth. Efua wiped her tears. What must I do? The old woman took her hands again. You must seek the one who can speak to spirits. Only they can tell you what this shadow wants and how to break its hold on you. Adenko's face paled. You mean the diviner? The old woman nodded. Yes, the one who walks between worlds. Silence filled the room. The diviner was feared by all. He lived deep in the forest, where few dared to go. They said he could speak to the dead, command the winds, and see into a person's soul. Efua's heart pounded. Could she face such a man? But then she thought of Kojo. She thought of Ya. She thought of the future she would never have if she did nothing. She lifted her chin and took a deep breath. I will go, she said. The old woman smiled. Then be ready. My child, for the truth you seek may not be the truth you wish to hear. And with that, the night swallowed them, and the journey to the unknown began. The night was cold as Efua, her father Adenko, and the old woman made their way through the thick forest. Owls hooted from the trees, and unseen creatures rustled in the bushes. Efua's heart pounded, but she did not turn back. She had to know the truth. After what felt like hours, they reached a small hut deep in the forest. A single fire burned outside, casting long shadows on the ground. The diviner sat in front of it, waiting for them. He was a tall man with skin as dark as the night, his eyes glowing like embers in the firelight. You seek the truth, he said before they even spoke. Sit. Efua sat, her hands trembling. The diviner threw a handful of white powder into the fire. It crackled and burned blue. He closed his eyes and began to chant. The wind picked up, and Efua felt something cold brush against her skin. Then, a whisper filled the air. A voice, soft and eerie, drifted through the trees. She is mine. Efua gasped. The voice was not human. It was deep, ancient, full of sorrow and anger. Who are you? The diviner asked. The flames flickered, and suddenly, the form of a man appeared in the fire. He was tall and strong, his face both beautiful and terrifying. His eyes locked onto Efua, and she felt an overwhelming sadness in his gaze. I am the one who has watched her since birth. The spirit said, I am the one who has loved her before she knew love. She belongs to me. Efua's voice shook. Why? Why have you done this to me? The spirit's face darkened. Because of your father. All eyes turned to Adenko. The old man's face was pale. He shook his head, stepping back. No, I thought it was over. Tell her, the diviner said. The spirit demands the truth. Tears welled in Adenko's eyes. He dropped to his knees and covered his face. Efua, my child, I have wronged you. How? She asked, her voice breaking. Adenko took a shaky breath and spoke. Before you were born, Our village suffered a great drought. The river dried up, the land became barren, and the people were starving. In my desperation, I went to the sacred shrine and made a vow. I promised the gods the first soul born into my household in exchange for rain. Efua's body went numb. The next day, the rain fell. Adanko continued, and that night, you were born. But when the priests came to take you as an offering, I hid you. I ran with you deep into the forest and begged for mercy. The gods did not punish me, but the spirit they had chosen did. The spirit's voice roared through the fire. You broke the sacred vow, Adanko. You stole what belonged to me. So I followed her. I watched her grow. And when she became a woman, I made sure no man could take her from me. Tears streamed down Efua's face. But I never asked for this. I never asked to be yours. The spirit's face softened. For the first time, he looked almost human. I loved you. Efua, I protected you from all who tried to take you away. But I see now that love should not bring suffering. The fire dimmed and the spirit sighed. I will let you go. The wind stilled. The forest fell silent. Efua felt a strange lightness in her chest, as if a great weight had been lifted. The diviner opened his eyes. It is done. The bond is broken. You are free. Efua sobbed, her heart filled with relief and sorrow. She had lost many, but now she could finally live. As they left the forest, the sun began to rise, bathing the land in golden light. For the first time in her life, Efua walked with hope, knowing that her future was now her own. And in the whisper of the morning breeze, she thought she heard a voice say, "Be happy, my love." But when she turned, there was nothing but the wind. And that is the end of the story. Efua was finally free from the spirit's hold, and the village of Ensumuru could once again rejoice. But let this tale be a lesson. Promises made to the unseen must never be broken. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe to Truly African Folk Tale Stories for more amazing and thrilling tales. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. See you in the next one.